You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the Sun's deputy political editor, Ryan Sabey, and the Guardian columnist, Zoe Williams. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Belfast Telegraph leads with the news that Democratic Unionist Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has resigned, having been charged with historical sex offences. The Mail carries a poll suggesting that more voters now trust Labour over the Conservatives when it comes to handling defence matters. Here's the Express. Their headline, Tory MPs warn voting for Reform UK will kill Brexit. The Times understands that the Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, is looking at proposals that would see patients at hospitals with the longest waiting lists treated privately instead. The Financial Times reports that Thames Water is seeking approval from the government and the regulator Ofwat to increase customers' bills by 56% over the next 6 years. The Daily Telegraph says that ministers are planning to introduce migrant crime league tables, which would require the crime rates of each nation's migrants in England and Wales to be published annually. The Guardian reports schools risk fuelling hate by avoiding talk of the Israel-Gaza war. The Mirror is outraged that a man previously convicted of rape has now been set free from another prison sentence for forging a winning lottery ticket after serving less than half of his term. The Eye hears that 16 million miles worth of bus routes across England have been cancelled in an effort by councils to save money. The Sun reacts to a possible shortage of Easter treats with the headline, Chocky Horror. While the Star tells us that new rules around facial hair for army members are oddly specific. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Ryan Sabey and Zoe Williams. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the Belfast Telegraph weekend edition, of course, and the story of Geoffrey Donaldson. Their headline, Donaldson bombshell. Ryan. Yeah,
there's big news that broke this morning and lunchtime. There was something we thought may have been up with his social media accounts that had been deleted, and it quickly emerged around lunchtime that he had resigned with immediate effect. And I think not only does it sort of leaves the party in turmoil in one respect. Gavin Robinson has stepped up to become leader, but what does it mean for Stormont? That's only been in place for the last few weeks, re-established, got that power sharing back up and running, and you kind of wonder whether there are questions about that. But you look to a couple of people, several people who've commented on that today. Gillian Smith, the former Northern Ireland Secretary, he said he wasn't particularly concerned about it and said it will press on regardless. And Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister, the Sinn Féin leader, also said that she remains committed to the process. So on one surface, you've got the big headline of what's actually happened to the individual. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it seems like the power sharing and Stormont will press ahead and just carry on.
What do you think, Zoe, in terms of the political ramifications? As we say, power sharing, DUP's only just gone back into power sharing the last couple of months.
Well, I think it would be very, very crass of the other parties to try and score a political point against the DUP on the basis of these allegations, because, whatever's been established, everybody knows they're extremely serious. And I think precisely because that power-sharing agreement is relatively new and relatively fragile, everybody concerned is being very careful to say, that is one person, one allegation, extremely serious, nothing to do with DUP politics. And I think it will be in everybody's interest to maintain that line. But it might even make them more conciliatory and more cooperative than they would have been otherwise.
Do you share that optimism?
I think so, because you look at over the last 2 years, it's taken for the power sharing to get back up. And the British government have put in a lot of money, £3 billion or so, just to get those institutions and put money into hospitals and sort out the public sector payout there. So I think, and as we're at such that sort of early stage, I think they'll just press ahead, and this will be treated almost in isolation in one respect.
We'll be handling the power sharing with kid gloves. Let's have a look at the Mail, and this is the Mail's own survey. Poll suggesting that voters no longer view the Tories as the party of defence, their poll reveals.
I mean,
why are you smiling?
I'm just smiling because it's really funny, right? Because, Labour, the further it goes from the last time Labour was in power, the less people really know, the less people can really remember what they would do on something like defence. And so people just rely on vibes, and they're like, and, especially, and the media is really guilty of this, much more than kind of voters. They're kind of, vague peacenik vibes. I remember them. Aren't they the people who are against nuclear weapons? Isn't Jeremy Corbyn a bit of a peacenik? A kind of cluster of impressions gather around the party on what kind of defenders of national security it would be, which has very little relation to, what the pledges are, what the manifesto says, what the leader says. So in order for them to be more trusted on defence than the Conservatives must have tumbled so far in everybody's estimation. And I think probably rightly, everything is underfunded, so people think the army is underfunded, which it is. Everything is kind of breaking or broken, so people think the army is breaking or broken, which it is. It's really just being pulled into all their kind of reputation for competency on matters of defence and militarism is completely being pulled into everything, whether it's the sewage or the NHS or anything else, any other kind of Conservative mess that you look at. And I think Labour are benefiting from that without actually necessarily having done anything.
And Ryan, this from a Conservative-leaning newspaper.
That's right, yeah. I think it just shows you that we did a poll in our paper this week, and it shows that pretty much on every subject, Labour were leaning, whether you look at leading, whether that's on the economy, the NHS, even who do you think is better out of Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer on the world stage? Keir Starmer won that. He's only been on an afternoon trip to meet Emmanuel Macron, and he's been to Canada to meet Justin Trudeau. So there isn't really the evidence to show that, but I think it's that institutional or the lack of memory of what it was like. And the infighting, particularly on defence in the Conservative Party, where you've got the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps calling for 3% of GDP to be spent on defence spending. You've got James Heappey who quit this week asking for 2.5%. So they're just shy, and they're just not reaching those targets that a lot of their MPs and ministers want.
And points to dissatisfaction, as you say, with the Conservative government overall. Let's have a look at the Express, Zoe, and this story, political also, regarding the fact that Tory MPs are warning against Reform UK, that, if the Tories help them in, they could kill Brexit, they say. I mean,
sorry, if I was grinning before about Labour being more trusted on defence, I'm really grinning about this story because it completely turns on its head what reform or the kind of reform-like parties of the past were invented for, right? The whole kind of UKIP onwards was invented as the kind of progenitor and the main arguer for Brexit. And so to see the Tories now reduced to saying, if you cast this vote, you will be undermining the project of Farage and everybody else in this party, just shows what kind of an absolutely contorted, casuistic situation they've got themselves into, where they're having to style themselves as the architects of a Brexit, which kind of most people don't really want to talk about anymore. And really, anybody who did want to talk about it would say that Nigel Farage was a much greater proponent of it than Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, elsewhere, I'm not in this particular article, but elsewhere, Ryan, there's a suggestion that Tories want Rishi Sunak to give Nigel Farage some sort of enticement or sweeties, ennoblement, but
That's
not
right.
campaign for your
lots
reform.
Lots of talk, and I think government sources have put it out as a scurrilous rumour that Nigel Farage could be made an ambassador for the UK ambassador out in Washington DC as that sweetie for him, and also maybe given a peerage. on the basis that the Reform Party, Nigel Farage was a founder of the Reform Party, that they don't put people up in certain seats. Like, just remember, go back to 2019 when the Brexit Party really did do the Conservatives, a favour and probably handed them a lot of seats by standing candidates down in those seats. But you just don't feel like that's not on the cards this time. You listen to the language from the leader, Richard Tice, and that's not happening.
And also, do you remember how many peerages Boris Johnson had to give out for that? I mean, ridiculous peerages like Claire Fox. What's she doing in the House of Lords? It's just a kind of desperate scramble to get the Brexit Party to stand down. And I just don't think Sunak would have that kind of capital, even if he felt inclined to do it.
What do you think to the relationship with Nigel Farage and the Conservative Party? Because the last Tory conference, he was almost seen as being welcomed into the fold.
But the thing is, with Nigel Farage, the man has got no honour as far as I'm concerned, because in that Tory conference, he was wandering around like he was a kind of commentator, like a kind of mischievous, cheerful commentator who had nothing to do with the actual overall politics of the thing. So he does pose an existential threat to this party, right? There are places in this country where Reform is polling higher than the Conservatives. He could drive a complete coach and horses. He could completely destroy their whatever seats they could kind of pick up in what everybody thinks is going to be a Labour victory. So, they could... There are loads of kind of perfectly sober heads predicting 100 seats for the Tories. The Reform Party could take them down to, double digits, 36 seats. And they still don't know how to deal with him. They still don't know how to take him head on. And the reason, I think, is that in the kind of post-election loss new Tory party, which everybody thinks will lurch to the right, nobody knows what kind of ally he's going to be and what kind of ally they'll need him to be.
Interesting, you think that he's got quite a bit of power. We must break there. Coming up, Thames Water seeks approval for a massive hike to customers' bills, but that's not the only increase on the horizon. We'll discuss that next. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Ryan Sabey and Zoe Williams. Let's take a look at the front page of the FT Weekend and this story concerning Thames Water and them seeking approval for quite hefty bill hikes. Zoe.
I mean, especially reported by the FT, you get this kind of very neutral, very impartial, kind of financially literate analysis, which says they weren't going to get any inward investment unless they found a way to make it profitable. They couldn't relax the regulations on how much sewage they're allowed to put into the rivers because everybody's so angry already. The shareholders had already rejected an injection of cash. And so the only place to go is to put bills up. That's the only place to go. But from a consumer point of view, from a citizen point of view, to see these companies who have been absolutely skimming money off what is effectively a monopoly ever since it was privatised. There's no way you can't shop around for your water. Will be completely gutting. I think it's not something which people are going to forgive.
And 56%. That's huge.
It's not just a small rise. Yeah, as you say, 56% go up by
2030.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a few years. It's going to be a real jump. And I think one of the few things that political people have been saying to me this week, there's a real visual this weekend on how good the water will be. If you look at the Oxford-Cambridge boat race, and actually a lot of the people, when they have the traditional throwing the cocks into the water at the end, I think some of them are actually going to refuse to just do it because the water quality is so poor. You've got no idea what you're going to pick up, and there's reports of waterborne disease and hospital admissions going up over the last few years as well. So it's a real problem. So you don't mind paying the money if you're going to get an absolute quality service, but when they're going up and the service is probably going down, there's a real problem.
It's really, really sad. I mean, I remember when I was young, people used to say, don't jump in the Thames because you might get Weil's disease, but that was carried by rats. Now they're talking about about E. coli, which is basically because of sewage. We'd like completely ruined our kind of public realm, our public water realm. And you know, it's really hard to escape the conclusion that all the debt that's been loaded onto the water companies and all the infrastructure that wasn't renewed, that wasn't looked after, is because shareholders have taken too much out. I mean, there isn't another conclusion.
And it's such an emotive subject. Liberal Democrats, in particular, are going to, you know, maybe not be quite front and centre of their election campaign, but they'll be putting a lot of attack adverts out on social media. We've all seen them of sewage flowing into the seas and the rivers, and people take note, and you know, they'll vote with their feet when they see that.
Yeah, the shareholders ruling out injecting £500 million of equity, but it seems inevitable, these bill rises. Not the only bills going up. There's a long list in the Mirror, Zoe.
I tell you what really is scary. So the Mirror has got a kind of aggregate of all the bills that are going up, and they add up £320 from April over the course of the year. What will scare you if you read this closely is that they've got a consumer expert at the start, this guy Greg Marsh, who tells you how to avoid your bills going up. And his first tip is, if you're eligible for a single person discount on council tax, go on the council tax website and tell them. And you're like, everybody who's eligible for a single person discount knows that already.
Wasn't the tip I thought you were going to share.
Exactly. It really does send a chill through your blood that you know, that's the best they can come up with. Yeah. I think money-saving experts are really at the end of their rope. Things are just getting more expensive. And the fact that inflation has kind of levelled does not mean prices are coming down.
And Ryan, the typical family of four will be paying more than £300 for household bills.
Yeah, just when you thought things were going quite well with energy bills coming down after the war in Ukraine is obviously still going on, but the energy prices have come down and the price cap has come down, but that has been offset completely. So the energy bills on average will go down by about £230, but all these other bills added up, your bills will be going up by £330, whether that's water, broadband, council tax. All these things are going up, and the council tax in particular going up by sort of 5% or so. So it's really going to hit. I mean, as you say, thankfully, inflation is a lot lower than what it was a couple of years ago, 11.1%. Yeah. But it's a real struggle for people.
No, absolutely. The Mirror, though, trying to inject a little bit of humour by saying it's not an April Fool. There really will be these rises. That's not funny.
That is funny,
No, not at all.